Hey guys, I've got another finished project video for you today. So what you're looking at here is the second of the Bearded Dragon boards. We already debuted the Jungle set earlier this month, and now we have the Forest set. The overall theme for this set was a mythical, overgrown set of ruins that you could play either sci-fi 40k games in or fantasy games on. As you can see, this is a pretty densely packed board. So just to let everyone know, this is a standard 6x4 foot table, which is, what you would play 40k on for the most part. So let's go ahead and take a look at some of the details on this set. First thing you'll notice is we do have these forest flat tree sets. This is just our standard set that we make, and it's all completely modular. You can remove the forests from it. You have these little hardboard flats. They're pretty simple, pretty easy. If you're interested in a set of those, feel free to hit us up at projects@titanterrainstudio.com, and we will be able to get some of those to you pretty easily. Next thing you'll notice is that we have a lot of sort of like archaic fantasy architecture here. You have these stone hinges. I'm just going to do a slow pan through here to show you off some of the details of it. What I was going for with this is sort of a Stonehenge ancient Celtic feel for the whole set, but I didn't want it to just be some simple rock hinges, so I added a lot of extra bells and whistles, some chains here and there, and then some ropes, they had to tie the hinges together. So these have been here for a while, but they have been here so long that the ropes have completely rotted away. One of my favorite things about this set is just the intricate rock detail that you see on all these pieces. One of the things we did different is I went through and I used a slightly different paint setup. I actually used some yellows in the stone as well to kind of get a mossy limestone feel to it. As you can see, there's a lot of cool details in this set. So we got that Stonehenge, and then we'll come over here and take a look at the other one. As you can see, very similar setup. Lots of those ropes and chains hanging off in different areas, more rocks. One of the things I also made sure to do is to leave enough space for single man infantry to be able to go through on the big ones. And then you can usually fit like one or two through these. So yeah, these turned out pretty awesome. I really like how these stone hinges look on the board next to all the trees and with the flock. I also made sure to leave some of the areas of the flock a little less on the stone hinges to represent how much foot traffic has been going on in the area. Because these are probably places of worship. And then we have a couple of natural pieces as well. So we have the hills, which these are, your steeped style hills. And just simple incline, which let's take a look at it from the side. So it's a slight incline, but not so much that your models would tip over. Very good for War Machine. But you also have a lot of detail in the hills with the rocks and all the texture. Now, something I did different with this set is you'll notice as you look through all the pieces that each of the pieces on top of the forests have a set of the forest trees that I use. These are Notch brand trees, by the way, if you're interested. You can get them through scenicexpress.com. So I'd made sure that with the theme of the overgrowth everywhere, that each piece would at least have one or two trees on it on top of the forest flats to really drive home that feeling of this being like a deep forest. And right here you've got a simple set of boulders. Now I built these to kind of have sort of a little bit of a box canyon feel. Just a little alcove that you can put your troops in. And I purposely put these trees up top here so that it wouldn't just be a set of boulders. It looks like they're a little overgrown. They've been there for a while. There's some soil built in. You've got some spots where you can set like one or two infantry up here. let's move over here. You've got some standing stones right here. One of the cool things is on some of these, I actually carved in like intricate rune work into the sides. We used pigment powders to get that subtle green highlight that you see in them. I'm just going to turn this around a little bit as well. You can see all these cool little Celtic sigils that I've carved in different spots. I really like how the underlying yellow color that we mixed into the paint scheme mixes with the flock job and the green to really create a very rich looking appearance. It's not just your regular drab gray rocks. I've been experimenting with different types of rocks and painting them to try and get a more realistic texture. This is another one of the hills. This is actually my favorite of the hills because it's got a lot of detail along the edges. Lots of rock work, lots of boulders. You've got a lot of area to hide your troops. And of course you've got those trees that I mentioned that we're putting on all the pieces throughout here. It's also sloped like the other ones are. So you can, move your troops up on there. It's probably big enough even for like a tank to pull up for 40K, which is pretty neat. And over here we've got another set of rune stones. This was built to be as more of an impassable, really difficult terrain. So I actually built it on purpose so that you couldn't easily place troops anywhere. Because, you do need terrain like that. Kind of gonna go over this. You can see those green glowy runes. They're not glowy in an overpowering way, and that's what I really like about how these turned out with the pigment powders. They're glowy more in a controlled way. Something also I will note for you guys, if you ever try to like carve stuff like this, or you're trying to get into niches, pigment powders are the way to go. I remember doing a War Machine set several years ago that I went in and I highlighted these all by hand, and it was such a pain in the butt. And then I used these pigment powders on this and for all the other rune work, and it just was way easier. And I purposely kept it a little subtle. Now the pigment powders, whatever you do put in there, they will, when you dull coat spray it, you can put a fixer on there first, but I use a dull coat spray. I'm going to be experimenting with a fixer. It will dull it a little bit, the color, and it'll spray it out a little bit if you use a spray. They do make various pigment fixers to lock that in. Alright, so those are all the natural pieces. So now let's look at some of these ruined castle pieces. And I'm going to just say this on a pride point, that I have finally perfected my stonework. I've tried many different techniques for doing cobblestone kind of rocky textures, and this by far has turned into my favorite way of doing it. Points if you can guess what the inspiration for this was. If you haven't guessed already, that was based off of the Mines of Moria scene from Lord of the Rings. I don't know why, but it just, inspired me. If you look at all that intricate stonework, one of the cool things I also started doing is I started pressing in some of the stones here and there to kind of create not just a flat texture, but to also create an appearance like it was actually stacked. Stacking stones takes forever, just saying. But pushing them in can kind of give the illusion on the terrain that the stone is stacked. So it's still all one piece. I'm probably going to experiment with it more in the future to see how advanced I can get it. But those few pushed in stones here and there really make those spots pop. And then you have this massive boulder over here that turned out really nice. I love how the paint job turned out. with the other overgrowth, it just looks really amazing. So this piece is mostly a line of sight blocker and an impassable terrain piece in terms of like 40k. But it's really useful because you can hide stuff behind it. It does make the enemy have to like think around it. And you know, what's the point of playing 40k on without, you know, interesting terrain to make your tactics shift a little? Which, by the way, there is a battle report that I will be posting here in a few days. I just have to edit it. Me and my one of my artists, Lath, have filmed a battle report of Necrons versus Grey Knights on this board, so stay tuned for that. Over here you have this archway. I made this archway big enough for a dreadnought to go through. Or, you know, hordes. It could be like, you know, circle war beasts. I'm just giving you kind of an idea of the detail on all this. I used a combination of different techniques for the rocks. Some of them were carved, some of them were cast, and then some of them were also made from bark, which I've been using that a lot lately. And over here you got the same thing going on here. More ruined castle area. That doorway is only big enough for an infantry. And this is also one of the points that I think looks the best on the castles, is all the imprinted stones here. Turned out amazing looking. That technique is going to be filed away for future use. All these huge overgrown boulders and stones. Alright, so that's all our castle pieces. So let's move on to the ruined sci-fi pieces. So what you have here are some simple 40k ruins. And when I say simple, I mean that they are effective. But the key thing to remember with these is the overgrowth and the style of which they are allows for some very playable and cool looking buildings. You got a lot of centerpieces in this set, and these ruined buildings. I didn't want the buildings to be too complicated. Wanted them to look like they could still fit in with the set, so we added some some overgrown patches of metal. You know, the building was destroyed at some point, so you see these little metal patches here and there. We actually did add some up here as well. They show through in some spots, but not in others. So here's another one of the buildings with the overgrown plate work. It's that same textured plastic sheeting that I used for the jungle set. You can get that pretty much at any hobby shop. What I like about these is the overgrowth is really cool looking. I like to think of them as like larger versions of Drop Zone Commander themed overgrowth, which is what they kind of reminded me of when they got finished. You have like a little corner ruin piece here as well. A little dozer blade that seems to have been abandoned and overgrown. And maybe there's even a bunker underneath. You know, you've got this this little hatch right here with some stuff that's still active, some glowing skulls. And over here you've even got like some glowing areas where there's ventilation ducts and other various doodads still active. So maybe, you know, maybe they have some sort of encampment underneath. Or not encampment, like a bunker system. You could totally... I would love to actually build a set where it's actually two sets. Going off on an inspirational idea here, but what you would do is you would have various buildings with stuff like this, like hatches all over it, and then you would have a separate table that would be the underground version. There was actually a RTS video game that I played years ago that did that style, and it was really cool. I'd love to incorporate it into a terrain set at some point. And this is the last of the ruined buildings for the sci-fi aspect of the board. If you live in New Jersey, feel free to check out the Bearded Dragon Game Store. That is who this is for. They're based out of Bernardsville, New Jersey. and they're a really awesome store, so I would recommend checking them out if you're ever in the neighborhood, especially with this awesome terrain that you'll get to play on. So yeah, that is the completed forest board for the Bearded Dragon game store. It's very versatile. It's got lots of different types of terrain options for different games, and it plays well just with everything on the board. So if you're interested in getting a set like this, or you would like to get a quote on painting as well, because we are opening up painting models as well, just feel free to send an email to project@titanterrainstudio.com, and we would be happy to get you a free quote.